Imagine stepping outside for just a second and never coming back. No goodbye, no sound, no struggle. That's exactly what happened to a man named Benjamin Bathurst. Welcome to the Midnight Ledger. I'm your host, Ivy Monroe, and today we're talking about a young British diplomat traveling through Germany in 1809 who vanished into thin air and was never seen again. He wasn't just some random traveler. Benjamin was a handsome and successful diplomat who one day went outside to check on his horses, and within moments, he was gone. His carriage was waiting. His assistant was only a few steps behind him, and yet, Bathurst vanished without a trace. He was there one minute and gone the next. The strange part? What they eventually found was even creepier than the disappearance itself. Benjamin Bathurst wasn't just anybody. He came from privilege, the son of the Bishop of Norwich. He was only 25, but already respected in diplomatic circles. He'd been stationed in Vienna during the Napoleonic Wars, working on secret negotiations for Britain. But as Napoleon's forces advanced, Bathurst knew it was time to leave. He disguised himself under the name Baron de Cook and began the long journey home with his courier, Herr Krause. Travel in 1809 was slow, dangerous, and unpredictable. Bandits roamed the countryside. News of war and spies filled every tavern. Still, Bathurst pushed forward, careful but determined. Nothing about the trip stood out until they reached a small Prussian town called Perleberg. By evening, Bathurst and Krause arrived at an inn called the White Swan. They ordered fresh horses for the next leg of their journey, but the postmaster said it would take hours. So, Bathurst rented a small room to rest and write letters while they waited. It was cold and getting dark. He spent most of the evening alone, scribbling notes at the small desk near the window. Around 9 o'clock, the horses were finally ready. Bathurst stood up, put on his fur-lined coat, and stepped outside to check the carriage. Krause stayed behind for less than a minute, just to pay the bill. When he followed Bathurst into the courtyard, the carriage was there. The horses were ready, but Benjamin Bathurst was gone. He didn't call out, he didn't leave a note. He simply vanished. At first, Krause thought maybe Bathurst had gone back inside. He searched the stable, the courtyard, every nearby alley. Nothing. By morning, the town was buzzing with the news. Local authorities joined the search. They dragged the nearby river, the Stepanitz, hoping to find any trace of him. But the water was empty. Then came the first clue. Bathurst's fur coat was discovered hidden inside the outhouse of a local family, the Schmidts. It wasn't torn or bloodied, just left there. Weeks later, 2 women out gathering wood in a nearby forest found his pantaloons, shoved beneath some brush 3 miles away. It was like someone had left a breadcrumb trail, only without the man himself. A local hostler named August Schmidt quickly became the main suspect. Witnesses claimed he'd followed Bathurst after seeing him at a nearby coffee house, but there was no evidence, no confession, just whispers. Bathurst's wife, Phillida, was devastated. She spent everything she had on the search, even traveled to Paris to beg Napoleon Bonaparte for help. Napoleon denied any involvement, but the rumor that Bathurst was taken by French agents never went away. Over the years, people came up with every explanation imaginable. The simplest one? Robbery. A traveler alone at night, carrying valuables, it made sense. Maybe Bathurst was attacked, killed, and his body hidden somewhere in town. The coat in the outhouse, the pants in the woods, just attempts to hide the evidence. But there were stranger ideas too. Some claimed Bathurst had lost his mind. that he'd been paranoid and nervous for days, convinced people were following him. Maybe he wandered into the night and met his end by accident. Others insisted this wasn't human at all, that Bathurst had somehow vanished into another dimension. Pamphlets and newspapers exaggerated the story, claiming he'd literally disappeared before his companion's eyes. One second he was walking ahead, the next, gone. That part isn't true. But once a mystery catches fire, truth stops mattering. More than 40 years passed. Then, in 1852, workers demolishing an old house in Perleberg made a disturbing discovery. Underneath the cellar floor, a skeleton. The skull was fractured, as if struck with something heavy. Locals whispered the same name immediately: Bathurst. Was this the diplomat who vanished decades earlier? Had he been killed that night and buried beneath someone's home? No one could prove it. The bones were never properly examined, and any chance at closure was lost to time. Bathurst's story faded into legend. A man erased by history, one moment alive, the next a rumor. This story was one from history that many had never heard of. Personally, I've often wondered how so many people have just vanished without a trace, and only for there to be no witnesses to the actual disappearance and no one willing to come forward and speak the truth. So what do you think happened to Benjamin Bathurst? Let me know in the comments. So what happened to Benjamin was not the only strange event that occurred in Germany during the 1800s. A few years later, another man appeared out of nowhere. It was May 1828, in the city of Nuremberg. A teenage boy stumbled into town, pale and trembling, barely able to walk. He looked lost, like he'd never seen daylight before. In his hand, he carried a strange letter addressed to a local officer. When asked who he was, he managed just 2 words: Kaspar Hauser. At first, no one knew what to make of him. He could barely speak, barely eat. His eyes darted around like everything was new, like the world itself terrified him. Over the next few days, he began to talk more, and when he finally told his story, people were stunned. Kaspar said he had spent his entire life locked in a dark cell. No windows, no other people. Just a bed, a few toys, and bread and water that appeared while he slept. He'd never known sunlight, never walked outside, never spoken to a soul, until someone set him free. He claimed a man had taken him out of the cell, given him the letter, and left him in Nuremberg, then vanished. It sounded impossible, and yet, there he was. News of the boy with no past spread fast. Within days, crowds came to see him. He was treated like a living mystery. Some believed he was a kidnapped prince, an heir hidden away to stop him from claiming a throne. The details seemed to fit: his refined manners, his delicate features, even the strange letter. Others said he was a fraud, a street kid pretending to be someone important. But whatever the truth, Kaspar became a celebrity. People studied him, wrote about him, argued over him, and all the while, Kaspar tried to make sense of the world he'd suddenly been thrown into. For 5 years, he lived under public fascination and suspicion. He learned to read, to speak, to live like everyone else. But that shadow of mystery never left him. Then, in 1833, something strange happened. One afternoon, Kaspar stumbled into a garden in the town of Ansbach, clutching his chest. Blood poured through his fingers. He was pale and gasping, and before collapsing, he managed to whisper that a man had lured him there. A man who said he could finally reveal the truth about his past. But instead, the man stabbed him. Kaspar Hauser died 3 days later. He was just 21. Then, In 1833, something strange happened. His death shocked Germany. Some people said the mysterious man had killed him to bury the truth forever, that Kaspar really had royal blood, and someone wanted him silenced. Others believed the wound was self-inflicted, a desperate act for attention that went too far. Whatever the truth, the boy who came from nowhere was gone. Even now, nearly 2 centuries later, no one knows who Kaspar Hauser really was. A prince? A liar? A victim of something we'll never understand. He appeared in the world as suddenly as Benjamin Bathurst had disappeared. 2 stories, opposite in direction, but eerily connected by mystery. One man stepped into the night and was never seen again. Another stepped out of darkness and into the world, only to vanish once more. History never explained either of them, and maybe that's why we're still telling their stories. Thanks for listening to the Midnight Ledger. I'm Ivy Monroe, and I'll be back next Tuesday with another strange story pulled from the darker corners of history. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. Until then, keep your lanterns lit and your curiosity alive.